My name is Dorna. I'm one of the founders of Documate. I'm a former lawyer myself, or actually, I guess I still pay my bar dues, so I'm a current lawyer. But we built Documate for lawyers to be able to build document automation in a more easy way, and in a way that you can make them client facing as well. So what we're sort of aiming to do is, we saw that most of the tools that existed on the market were either really powerful but really difficult to use and required you to learn a whole new coding language. Or on the other end of the spectrum, they're very easy to use but don't have a lot of complexity. So you can't really add nested logic. There's a lot that you can't do. So I think many of you have already seen a little bit of a Documate demo in our last session. So you probably already know a little bit about what we do. But Documate can mainly be used in sort of 3 different ways. One is for completely internal document generation. So if you or your staff, your paralegals, your secretaries, your other attorneys want to be able to generate documents more quickly in-house, that's use case number 1. Use case number 2 would be making it partially client-facing. So having like a client intake form be sent out to clients, having clients fill out that information, and then having that data come back to you so that you can generate the documents more easily. And then option 3 is sort of like, you want to be a legal tech entrepreneur and you want to create a full-fledged legal tech product that you put out there in the world, and you have clients use almost like a TurboTax for law, if you will. That's sort of the spectrum of different types of tools that you could be building. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to Drew to just tell us a little bit about, he's been kind of one of our early adopters. And so I know he's also seen the product progress and change throughout the time that he's been with us, and hopefully it'll only be more, and next year we'll look back and have even more features. So he's been a great help in even just suggesting features and asking us for things, because we want to make sure that we're serving you guys. So that's been really helpful to get his feedback as well. So Drew, I'll let you take it away. I think you're on mute though.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Dorna. So I'm a Bali alum, and have worked with Cynthia, and Cynthia has invited me to speak to Bali on a regular basis about some of the things that we do in our practice. And because of that, I got an email, I think it was last week, that Cynthia had sent out about this meeting. And when I got it, I reached out to Dorna and I reached out to Cynthia unprompted and said, I want to come and talk about Documate, because it's been such a helpful tool. And so there are 2 things that I want to sort of sing the praise of, both the product and the service. In my practice, I'm 100% litigation, and anybody who does litigation knows that it can be very document intensive, especially when you get to doing discovery, doing motions, things like that. A lot of that requires a lot of we'll call it administrative work, and sort of setting up shells and getting things ready so that you can actually go in and perform the substance. And one of the things that I've tried to do from the inception of my firm was to reduce the administrative burden that I ultimately have to handle. And now that I've hired folks that help me handle that, to reduce the burden on them so that that time can be spent doing other or more things that help move cases forward. And so I've been using Documate for, I think December will be my 1-year anniversary. And have been able to create a whole number of documents that, again, reduce the amount of time that myself and my staff spend producing shells or actually substance from 30 minutes or an hour to literally 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. You know, we've streamlined our discovery requests and our discovery responses. We've streamlined normal correspondence that has eliminated the need to go and find the most up-to-date template in the folder or take one from another matter folder and modify it, which again, just going and searching for takes a bunch of time. And so, you know, it's a really powerful tool. I'll vouch for what Dorna says, which is, you know, for the last year and a half, I had been looking for a solution that would allow me to do this. But they have limitations in the way that they're built that you guys will get into today that makes them more limiting and, you know, unable to satisfy a lot of the needs that we have in our practice. The other thing that has been great about Documate is the service. And Dorna may not want me to sort of advertise this, but Dorna and I have spoken at like 11:30 at night sometimes, or traded emails at 2 or 3 in the morning as we're trying to work through things. And I've had some questions about things. The level of service that she and the rest of Documate provide are beyond what you will get at any other company, and sort of beyond what you should expect to get, quite frankly, for the product. I've also enjoyed the fact that, you know, because this is a new and a growing product, that they're open to suggestions. And there have been a number of suggestions that I have made that they've gone and built out, or that they have the system, and to be able to help, you know, help grow it. You know, it's been really nice to see the responsiveness that Documate has to the folks that it helps. And so for all of those reasons, you know, I love to evangelize both the product and what Dorna and her team does.
Thank you so much, Drew. So great to have you on our platform. Has been great to see you build everything that you've done. And I know once everyone else gets into the substance of their practices, they can probably look to you for quite a bit of inspiration as well there.
Yeah, and you know, Cynthia has my email, and Dorna does too. I'm happy to answer any questions about, you know, these types of things offline, but I will let you guys get to your documenting.
Thank you so much, Drew, and thanks so much for joining us.
All right, bye guys. Have a great day.
Bye, Drew. All right. Well, everyone. So I guess let's sort of just get into it. So I thought what I was sort of going to do before I got into the documents, and I don't know if this would be helpful because I don't remember how many of you were at the last session versus this session, was just to go over a few examples of things out in the wild. Would that be helpful for you guys to see? Maybe like 5 minutes on, I have a little PowerPoint presentation. I'll go through a few different examples of how other lawyers, like you just heard from Drew, he has a full discovery platform built out, very intricate with, depending on, you know, what type of case it is, what type of discovery he wants. But there are also some tools that are more client facing that I thought might be fun for you guys to see. So why don't I do about like 5 minutes of sharing that, and then we'll dive into the document. And for those of you who have joined us since I added it into the chat, today we'll be building out an independent contractor agreement on the Documate platform. I think everyone should have access to the platform now. So because everyone who signed up or emailed me, I gave you access. So if you don't, just message me or maybe message in the chat so that I can make sure that we give you access as well. And so today, I'm assuming that not everyone came here with their own version of an independent contractor agreement. So what I did is I dropped in the chat the version that I'm using so that we can kind of, I'll share my screen in a second and we'll just kind of go back and forth, and I'll show you, and you guys will do, and we'll play back and forth. So
Dorna, just real quick, when people join late, they don't see the historic chat. So before we jump into the independent contractor, let's reshare. You don't need to do it right now, but let's share to get that file again.
Good to know.
Okay, I'll share it myself, but mine wouldn't go through for some reason.
Oh, weird. I'll share it again once we're going to get into it, just in case a few more people are going to join before then.
Perfect.
So let me just quickly, learning something new about Zoom every day, I guess. Let me just quickly pull up the PowerPoint and I'll share that. Here we go. And I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. All right, perfect. So, and I see someone also asked about the app link, and I'm not sure if that is referring to how you sign up. So if you guys haven't signed up, I'll just send this publicly to everyone. Incubator.documate.org/user/register is where you'll sign up. And then once I see that you're signed up, I'll check again in a second. I'll give you guys access. I think most people should already have access. All right, so building legal products. So as I said, this really, what you're building could kind of run the gamut between the in-house tools and client-facing tools. And the process that we're gonna go through today to build it is threefold. So some of you may remember this from the last session, but the first thing we're gonna do is set up the questions. The second thing we're gonna do is set up the document. And the third thing we're gonna do is really just run it so it's live. And the reason we have this process, as opposed to just starting with the document, is because we enable you to make client-facing tools that don't necessarily have to derive directly from the document, but can be something where you're providing videos and images and instructions to your end user before they even get into the meat of what's needed for their documents. So that's why we have the questionnaire piece separate from the document piece in terms of the setup, so that you have full power over how you control that if you wanted to build like a legal application. So the first piece is setting up the questionnaire. So I'll show you this on the interface in a second, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna select different types of questions. Like, for example, you may wanna ask about what's the client's name, and you might add a text question for that. And so you'll write out the question, you'll give it a variable name, and then you can add logic to all those questions. So the questionnaire is where you're gathering all the data that's going to be important for your end documents. Second part of the process is loading your output documents. So output documents are those templates and those forms, whether they be Word documents or PDF documents. Today we'll be working with a Word document that you want generated at the end of the process. So that data that goes in, where is it going to flow into, and how is it going to dictate your actual end documents? And we're really meant for you to be able to customize your custom documents. So they can be judicial counsel forms as well, or government forms, or other PDFs. But if you have documents that no other firm has, you can customize those on Documate. And then the third step is running the workflow. So that's when you actually just, you publish it, you make it live, and you are able to generate documents from it. So what I wanted to show you are a few examples of ways that Documate's being used kind of in the wild to hopefully give you a little bit of inspiration. So one example is a legal aid organization here out of, I'm in Los Angeles, here out of Los Angeles, called BetZedek. They have a clinic where they have volunteers, and actually I'm not sure how they do this now with COVID, they're probably doing it somehow virtually, but they have a clinic where they have volunteer lawyers, pro bono attorneys, and then also BetZedek staff attorneys come in to help clients who come in on a walk-in basis to the clinic for name and gender change forms. And so previously what they were doing was they were taking those forms, which in this case are mostly judicial counsel forms, in California judicial counsel forms, and they were typing information into them. And that was taking quite some time, because a lot of the questions across like the 10 or 15 different forms that need to be filed, and including the local forms, it's actually asking quite a bit of similar information. And as you guys probably know, court forms are not always the most intuitive. You kind of have to make sure you didn't miss anything on the form, because the clerks will reject everything and send it back. So what they did is they basically automated that process inside a Documate, and now that not only helps them draft faster, because all they need to do is answer certain questions and then all the documents are generated at the end, but it also enables them to really work better with volunteers, because those volunteers may not be experts in this area. Yes, they probably read the training materials, but they don't know every single nuance. So it's really helpful to build out this sort of like expert system for them to help them through that process. Another example is actually like a judge out of Louisiana who has taken his whole practice online, or his whole basically his whole work online since the pandemic hit. And so since March, he's been using all of these other tools, and it's not just Documate for building the online forms, but he has a bunch of other tools here that I thought you guys might find interesting, many of which you're probably using already. But he's really using all these off-the-shelf tools to be able to practice completely online. And I think that's really interesting, because I think many people think, if I'm going to take my practice online, I need to hire a developer and it's going to be so expensive. But really, there really are tools out there for almost everything you want to do, that you can pay, a tiny amount per month and have as part of your practice. And so you can take a look at some of these examples, like DocuSign and HelloSign you're probably already using, Calendly and Acuity for scheduling hearings, Squarespace for building websites. Some of these you're also already probably using. A few more examples. Hello Divorce is a company here they're based out of California, but they actually have now expanded into other states. And this is an example of that, the third example that I said, where they're a full-fledged technology company. So they were, and they still are, they have a family law practice, like a full law firm where they provide full services, but they also have this legal technology company called Hello Divorce. And they built all of the automation on top of Documate, so that when their clients come in, they can go through, answer certain questions, generate documents, and they actually have kind of all this, they have the whole spectrum of different DIY options. So whether you're the type of person who likes to go to like the self-checkout at the grocery store and you don't want to talk to anyone, you just want to do everything DIY, or whether you're the type of person who really wants to have a little bit more hand-holding as a consumer, they've provided that option. So I think this is super interesting and hopefully inspiring to you guys in terms of other business models that we as lawyers can use, because it's not all about the billable hour. There are other ways that you can actually make more money or have a better work-life balance, or create a scalable practice through different models. So hopefully that's kind of interesting as well. Two more. One is a subscription platform, also a law firm that started a technology company. They're based out of Illinois, and they help landlords with lease agreements. And they were finding that landlords were often pulling things off the internet or using old versions of lease agreements they may have gotten previously from a lawyer, but the law may have been updated in favor of the landlord, or there may be additional disclosures you need to give. So what they have is they call it fresh lease, which means every time that the landlord goes onto their platform, they just pay the subscription fee for the year. And they're always getting the most updated version of the lease that the lawyers at Fresh Lease have kind of vetted and made sure is up to date. And then finally, one last example before we dive in is LCN Legal. So they're a tax, they're transfer pricing law firm, and they're actually based out of the UK. And this is a really good example of something that's not only very complex, because they have tons of complex calculations and date calculations and numerical calculations and logic inside of their documents, but also they've made I know at least bilingual, and I know they're in the process of building a trilingual platform in English, Chinese, and Portuguese. So that's a really good example, particularly, in states like in California, for example, where I am, we have lots of consumers who want Spanish versions or even many other different languages. So to be able to provide the questionnaire in that format for your clients, and everything here that's built is mobile friendly. So if you have clients who are sitting on their couch or they want to fill it out in an easy way, that's all possible as well. So those are all the different examples. And now what I'm going to do is, if anyone has any questions as I'm going through, please do dive in, because this is really a session for you guys all to be able to learn. But the next thing I'm going to do is, so I'm going to drop in the Independent Contractor Agreement that I mentioned into the chat for anyone who recently joined. And then I see that there are a few people who just signed up. So let me just give you guys access really quickly as well. And then we'll go ahead and dive in. And for those of you who have your accounts, you'll always log in from incubator.documate.org. And what that means is that when you log on, once you have access, you should be able to see in the top right a button that says dashboard. And so once you access the dashboard, you'll be, I'll share my screen in a second, but you'll be on the same page as I am. And then one thing you're going to need to do is get your API key, which I'll also put in the chat. For those of you who signed up before, I think you all got my email, so you'll already have the email instructions on that. Okay, so everyone who just signed up now has access. And then once we get into the Word add-in, I'm gonna type in where you're gonna find your API key. You're gonna go there to get your API key. But let me go ahead and share my screen now. And we'll get started. All right. Okay, so everyone should be able to log in now, click on their dashboard, and please let me know if I'm going too fast in any part of this. I can slow down, but everyone should be, and I'm at demo.documate.org, which is not the account that you guys are on. You guys are on incubator.documate.org. So of course, log in from there. Once you're there, everything's going to look exactly the same as it does here. And so please go to your dashboard right here. And that will take you to the master dashboard, exactly where I am. So the master dashboard is where you're going to be able to set up all the different workflows. And you guys probably only have one workflow on there right now that says sample interview or sample workflow. What we're going to do now is we're going to create a new workflow that is going to be our independent contractor agreement workflow. So you can call it whatever you want, but I'll call mine independent contractor agreement. And in terms of terminology, so a workflow is a set of questions that generates a set of documents. Today, we're going to be building a workflow that just generates the independent contractor agreement because we want to kind of just learn the nuts and bolts. But I just want you guys to know that it's not limited to one document. So you can have 20, 30 documents on one workflow. And that will be it'll populate all of them at the same time. But we're just starting with something super simple and basic today. So we're going to create our workflow here. And now what you should see is this screen. So this screen, and I sort of have these in two different, I've split my screen here because we're going to move to the document. And it's also helpful for us to look at the document while we're building our workflow to know what the topics are that we want to put in here. So if you want to do that, that might be helpful as well, or you can just look at mine. So we now have the builder screen open. The builder screen is made up of two main tabs. One is the questions tab right here. That's where you're going to add all those questions that are going to be relevant to your end documents. The second is the output documents tab. So the output documents tab is where we're going to load our templates after we set them up in Word. If you had a PDF document, you just load it directly there. But today we're going to be working with a Word document. And I think Word documents are a lot more powerful as well if you have the option, because a PDF is a static image, which obviously if you have a court form or government form, you have to work with the PDF. But if you have your own forms, it's always better to work with a Word document because it can move and looks nicer all together. So we are on the questions tab. What we're going to do is first, let's give it a title. So on the page title, we can give it something like, you guys can choose whatever you want, but I'll call mine "Welcome to the Independent Contractor Agreement Builder." And if you wanted to add additional narrative, sometimes people add a bunch of paragraphs at the beginning to give disclosures. Like some disclosures you might consider would be to say that there's no attorney-client relationship, or that this is only meant for people in a certain state, or other types of disclosures like that would be really useful to put on the first page. So if you wanted to add additional text here, you can do that. I won't do that right now. On that note though, why don't we have our first question be something like, what state are you in? Because in the independent contractor agreement that we're going to build out today is a California document. So this is one situation where you may want to ask questions to screen people out of the process. So what I might want to do is add a question up front before anyone starts answering a bunch of questions that aren't relevant to them, and say, what state are you in? So I'm going to create, so you click add question, and you're going to have a variety of different questions to choose from. So let me go through a few of these really quickly. If I wanted to, this piece works a little bit like SurveyMonkey or Typeform, or even Google Forms, but a little bit with a little more power, where you're going to be asking questions, and you can create what type of questions you want to ask. So for example, I might add a text question if I wanted to ask about the client's name, because I want them to be able to just enter free-form text. I might add a text area question if I want a narrative. I might, multiple choice and checkbox are single select and multi-select. So I might want to add a single select question if I'm going to ask someone about their marital status, because they can't be married, single, and divorced. They have to be only one. Whereas I might ask a checkbox question if I'm going to ask them what fruits they like, because they might like apples, oranges, and pears. And then we have a few other validation type ones here. So like a number question, a date question, email. These, you can even have people, whether it's you or your client, upload files here. So that's all possible as well. And then we have these instructions. And so the instruction is what I'm going to use in a second. So I'm going to use a multiple choice question to ask what state the person's in. And then if they tell me that they're not in California, I'm going to give them an instruction to say, sorry, this workflow is not for you. So let's go ahead and do that first. So everyone kind of follow along with me, and we'll add a multiple choice question. And we'll say, what state are you in? Every single question has a variable name attached to it. So the variable name, it can be anything you want it to be, but I usually recommend using something that makes a lot of sense to you and is descriptive of the question. So for example, I might call this state name. And you can call it, you know, something that makes sense to you, any of your questions. And then here, because it's a multiple choice question, I get to insert my options. So in this case, I'll just add two options. I'll say California or other. Everyone following along? Just type in the chat if you want me to slow down or if you're stuck on anything. Now, the next question we're going to add is the instruction question, because what we want to do here is, if the person's not in California, we want to say, sorry, this workflow is not for you. You should consider one of our other workflows or consult a member of our team. So an instruction question is actually not a question at all. It's just an instruction block. So what it does is it gives some information to the end user. And just for your information, kickout page sort of does the same. So we could also do that, but I'll just do instruction here. Kickout page would be a page that doesn't allow them to move forward at all. So I'm going to add an instruction question, and I'm going to say, sorry, this workflow is not for non-California users. Please consult a member of our legal team. And then here you can actually add a ton of other stuff. So if you wanted to like bold things, put videos in, like put in a little video to take them somewhere else, or if you wanted to put a little hyperlink to say, you know, our website is here, you can do that. We have a little bit of like, it's sort of, if you guys have ever used Slack, it's actually the same font that Slack used to use before they came out with actually the buttons where you could use it like a few months ago. But you could do something like at this link. I can send you guys some information about how you set up some of these, but it's just two brackets around this link and then the actual website. So that's what I'll do here. And then what I want to do is, with these variable names, there are a few different things we're going to do. We're going to set question logic, which means which questions are going to show up or not show up. We're going to set page logic, which means which pages of questions are going to show up or not show up. We're going to set document logic, which means which documents are going to show up or not show up. And then finally, we are going to set up the actual document itself, which will be really where the meat and the power is going to come from. And we'll get to that in a second. So that's what we're going to use the variable name for. So let's start with that first one, question logic. So here I've asked this question about what state are you in? Now, what do you guys think we want to do next? And maybe feel free to dive into the chat if you guys want to, and just give me some thoughts on what you think we want to do next in terms of logic. And if no one answers, I'll just give you guys the answer. If California, ask the name. Excellent, great. Beth had I think Beth sent that to me privately, so I don't think you guys saw it, but that's a great one that to ask. Yes, but what about, so we'll add that in a second, and then if they answer other, we probably want to show this message, right? This message on question number 2. So let's add that logic in. So what we'll do is, by default, we're on this edit tab, this little pen right here, but we also have these 2 other options here. One is these branching logic arrows. So anywhere where you see these branching logic arrows, that means that you are able to go to another, like you're able to add logic to that question. And then the advanced tab gives you a few more options, but mostly it's the help text. So I will go to these branching logic arrows, and like Jordan said, I'm going to add some logic because the person has said other. So I'll say show if. You can also do hide if, but I think show if looks a little bit cleaner. You can say show if state name is other. So if the person is in another state, they are not they're going to be able to get this message. And actually, we can do a little preview of this. If you guys have all set this up, you can press save right here. And then what we can do is when we press save and run up at the top, that's actually going to open up another tab and give us a preview of what this workflow looks like. So I open this up. By default, there is this first question here. What state are you in? If I say California, nothing happens, and I'm going to be able to continue to the next page. If I say other, though, it's going to give me this little message here. It's going to say, sorry, this workflow is not for non-California users. Please consult a member of our legal team at this link. And then it's going to take me to Documate this case, but it can be your own website. Also, another thing to keep in mind is you can actually customize all the styling. So if you had like your own custom CSS, or you wanted to use, there's bootstrap styles on the internet that you can use for free, or if you have a designer who's built your own CSS, you can change all of that to really match the look and feel of your website as well, including the logo and all that. So going back to page number 1, now, actually, so just to be clear, I had opened up this other tab, so I can just close this out so I can reduce the number of tabs I have. And we'll actually close that as well. So what we're going to do is take Beth's suggestion, which was to, if it is California, we want to move forward with the workflow. So I can either add the additional questions on this page, or maybe I want to break it up amongst multiple pages. Totally your choice in terms of kind of authoring discretion. So what I'll do in this case, I'll add a new page just so we can kind of show you how that works. So my new page is gonna be a whole separate page. So that means when I press continue, it'll take me to the next page, and I'll start asking about some general information. Or let's start entering some information. And the first thing I want to do here is ask the client name. So what we'll do is we'll click add question here. We'll be able to add, I probably want to add that as a text question, because a text question doesn't limit me to certain responses. It allows me to specifically choose that question type. So I'll add text question here, and then I will ask, what is the client name? Or maybe even, we might even want to ask, like, what's the company name instead? And that's something that I'm asking because I'm looking at this document that's here on the right-hand side, which you guys all have, and I see that there are a bunch of places where I'm going to want to insert the company name. So the consultant's name I'm also going to want to ask, and the corporation's name I'm going to want to ask. And as you can see, there's a ton. This is probably very familiar to you guys in terms of, if any of you guys, probably not as much the litigators in terms of all the bracketing, but documents all over your firm's templates where there are footnotes and things where we need to take a look at those footnotes to determine how we're going to answer how we're going to populate the document. So let's start with the company name. We'll say company name as the variable name. The next question we want to ask is, let's do some more simple variables. So we are going to get into some more logic in the document as well, but I'm going to have you guys add a few simple variables first to kind of, because there's a lot of basic stuff that we need to get in there first. So the next question I'll ask is another text question, and I'll say, what is the consultant's name? And probably we can either do the effective date here, or what I'll actually do is I won't ask the date. I'll actually just insert today's date when we get to the document, because I want to show you that feature as well. So those are some of the things that we've put in. So let's scroll a little bit down and start doing some logic. So, and asking questions that are going to be logic based for the document. So can anyone tell me what's the first section you see inside of this document that is going to be logic based? You can just feel free to type it into the chat if you want, or I can give you the answer. So we're probably going to want the first bracketed section here. So as we can see, all of this is just going to be fields that we're going to be populating. But we start to see here that there's a bracketed section right here. And there's a footnote on that bracketed section. And it says, include the perfect, if there are any deliverables. Janice, thank you. So we're gonna, and that's gonna depend on whether, according to this footnote, the consultant's engagement with the company is project-based. And it says the optional language of this agreement for use in this agreement for use if the consultant's engagement is project-based, assumes that consultant is being engaged for a single project. So if you're gonna have ongoing projects, that could be some additional language that we add inside of the workflow. We won't do that today, but if you wanted to really make it robust, you might want to add all of that instructional information, like, hey, if it's more than one project, then you may want to think about this. All these considerations are things you can either throw into the instructions or take account for inside of the document itself. So why don't we ask another question here? And let's ask a yes or no question. And let's say, is the consultant's engagement project-based? Simple variable name that makes sense here. You can choose what you want again, but I'll just use project-based. You could say project-based, like yes, no, or something like that. And let's ask a few more questions here, and then we'll kind of go down and ask a few more questions and look at some of these, and then we'll actually go dive into the document after that to show you how we can say that if the question was answered a certain way, that document will be populated in a certain way as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the next section that we have like that. So we know we have this section right here, and I'm actually just going to kind of go down and see. We also have the company will review the deliverables, so that's another review period question section, and this one is dependent on footnote 3, so it's also a project-based one. So we now know that that one question is going to add a ton of different pieces of logic inside of our document. Now we'll go move down to the fees and expenses section. So we see that this is another section regarding independent contractors, typically paying their own expenses. This is one where we might not want to put it into the workflow itself, but rather make that decision for the end user. Like, what is the risk tolerance? Do we want to keep this in there and allow the end user to choose? Or do we want to make that decision for the end user? And that's another situation where you really need to think about, who is your end user? Is your end user going to be one of your clients who is not in the legal department, but is at one of your companies and is generating these independent contractors agreements often and doesn't necessarily have the skills to make that assessment on their own? Or is your end user someone who's like the legal officer at a company, and in that case, you may want to give them a little bit more flexibility to be able to draft this document exactly how they want to. So in this case, let's pretend that our audience, so thinking about your audience is really important, but let's pretend that our audience in this situation is actually just someone who we want to make the decision for, so that we can make that process easier for them. So what I'm just going to do is I'm actually just going to delete this section altogether from my document so that we are not including that. And this footnote 5 should be deleted as well, I believe. All right, so, and then let's do the same for any of these sections that are related to not advising not to include them. Now, the next thing we want to do is we have a few other different sections that we want to go down to that are going to be specifically based on some logic. So, for example, one that may be very often used is the jurisdiction. So, for example, here, if their jurisdiction is California, we would just keep that as California, but we might want to ask them what the county is. So let's keep this as California, or you can insert another piece of logic there to make the jurisdiction another state, or, but we still need to do the county. So here it says any action proceeding arising out of this agreement shall be resolved in the state of California, county of, and this county right here, we're going to give some options for. So let's add a question here, and let's add a multiple choice question here. So let's say, what county should the agreement, or what should the choice of law be? I guess venue. And then I can call this county name. And we'll give a few different options. So I know not everyone is in California, so I'll just give you some examples. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Orange. And we could list off all the different counties in that case if we wanted to as well, and then they'd be able to choose from those. Now, let's scroll down a little bit more. As you can see, there are quite a few different fields here that are really going to be filled out by the same pieces of information. So we've already asked the company's name, we just will insert that. Another piece that we want to add is how these people are going to be paid. How is this contractor going to be paid? So as you can see here on this Exhibit A, there are 3 different options. There's the fixed fee example, the hourly rate example, and then if you want potentially some equity compensation, you can add that in as well. So what we'll want to do here is probably add 2 questions here at the very least. So first, the fixed fee or hourly rate question. Then we're going to ask about whether there's going to be any equity compensation. And then there's a ton of underlying questions for each of these. So if it's a fixed fee, we want to know what the fixed fee is. If it's an hourly rate, we want to know what the hourly rate is. So why don't we, again, you can add these questions on the same page, but it might be nice. I always like to kind of break up different categories up because it makes it easier on the end user. So I'm going to create a new page, but you can choose if you want to add a new page on your end. So we'll add a new page and I'll call it payment. And we'll add a question here. So I'll ask the question, what do you guys think is kind of the highest level question that we should be asking for the Exhibit A? Because obviously there's a lot of little questions, all these little blank spots need to be filled out. But what are the high level questions that need to be asked here? just throw them out in the chat if you want. I'll just make this a little bit larger too in case that's helpful. Perfect. Adelita said fixed fee versus hourly. So yeah, you always want to think about high level questions first, because you don't want to be asking people questions that they may not actually need if they had answered a future question a different way. So when we ask this question, then we're not going to ask about an hourly rate if the person chooses that they want the fixed fee. So let's add a multiple choice question, and we'll say, how will the consultant be compensated? Compensation. And what I'll give as the options is fixed fee, and hourly, like that. Now, we have a few different questions underneath those questions that we want to add. So we probably want to ask whether there's what the fixed fee is, right? So I'll actually add 2 questions here, and we're going to see some logic in action here. And actually, I should probably make these number questions, because these are all, we want to limit these people. We want to limit our end user to only entering numbers, and that makes sure that we have as little error as possible. So I'll add a number question here, and then I'll add a second number question here. And here, I'm going to ask those 2 questions. What is the fixed fee for this project? I'll give it the variable name fixed fee. And then I'll have what is the hourly rate. I'll give it the variable name hourly rate. But we don't want both of these questions to show up, right? So like we learned on the other page, on the first page, which we did with the instructions, we want to add some logic to these 2 questions. So what we'll add is on questions 2 and 3, just to make it quicker, I like to just do them at the same time. So I'll just push the logic tab like this, put the logic tab like this. And we know that we want to show this one if compensation is fixed fee, and then show if compensation is hourly. So again, now when we run this, these are only going to be asked in those situations. And then we also see that we have an hourly rate cap here. So that's a second question that we want to only ask if the person is being paid by the hour. So we'll do another number question, and we'll say, what is the hourly rate cap? And by the way, I just prefer to use my variables with no underscores, but you can do whatever you want. Cap, there we go. And it won't allow you to use the same variable for 2 things. So as you can see, if I tried to use hourly rate, it's going to say you can't use that because I already have it used above. And then let's ask one last question about the equity. So we'll add an equity compensation question. So we'll say yes, or maybe we'll make that a yes or no question. We'll say, will there be equity compensation? Equity compensation will be my question. So what we've done so far is we've kind of built out the bulk of the main questions that we're going to be asking inside of this workflow. Now, a few other things that we may want to do is, we want to kind of fill out all of these. We want to make sure that every single contingency that's in this document is taken care of. But I think what you guys probably want to do is just go ahead and move to the document so that we can actually see how it works in action. And then we can always come back and add more questions and make it more robust and build it out. Actually, one of the tips that I always give to people who are building out new products, new like legal products or new tools, is to start small, because you may have really big ideas of what you want to build, and that's amazing. And that means you have an idea that's hopefully going to go very far. But when you start out, you want to start with the most simple use case, and then you can build out from there, and that will make it much less overwhelming. If you start with a super simple agreement and then you add on complexity, and then you add on more documents, and then you add on more legal areas, and you add logic from that basic set, you can iterate really quickly. So I like to say start small, think big, but iterate quickly and change rapidly according to what your users, and whether those users are your staff or even yourself as the user of your own tool, or whether they're your clients, you want to just take their feedback and iterate on that. So does that so far make sense to everyone, what we've built so far? And is there anything that you guys want to cover or any questions you guys have on the questions piece before I move on to showing you guys how we set all this up inside of the documents? And feel free to either type in the chat or take yourselves off mute if you have any specific questions, or if you want to cover anything before we move forward.
I just wanted to say thanks so much for showing us this. It looks like it could be very helpful. I'm finding that I'm needing to just watch, because when I start looking at what I'm doing, then I'm missing what you're doing, and then I miss something and it just gets jumbled up. So I'm just watching today.
Perfect, no problem. And actually what might be useful is, I know the session's being recorded, so you guys can always kind of take the recording and then play along in the future and press pause. I actually did this, I did a sort of similar hands-on session this summer for a legal tech online program, and that's what a lot of the students did, is they later on took the video and then paused and did it on their own. So that might be a good way for you to get it set up afterwards. But that sounds great.
I think you said this in the beginning, that some of the questions or the answers can be applied to additional documents. For example, the information we're gathering in this, you could also use in additional documents.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So right now we're just working with this simple example, but if we had, let's say we had an independent contractor agreement, and then what else goes with an independent contractor agreement? Maybe like some other, I don't know if this has maybe some other kind of confidentiality agreement that goes along with the independent contractor agreement, or maybe you even have like a separate arbitration agreement. Let's say you wanted all three of those documents. If you've built out the questions, as I'm going to show you in a second, you can tag it to the first document, but you can also tag it to all the other documents, so the information will flow into all of them.
Thank you.
Perfect. And then I think Jordan is keeping me in check. No, Jordan, I did not add logic to the question 4, and I should have, so thank you for that. So let me add that logic here. So what is the hourly rate cap? I obviously don't want this to show up if the person's fixed fee. So I'll say show if compensation is hourly. Perfect. Thank you for that, Jordan. And we'll go ahead and save that. All right. So are you guys ready to move on to the documents piece? All right, excellent. So what I want you all to do is, for those of you who just signed up, you may not already have this set up, but I'll just go quickly over this, or you can do it afterwards. But you want to add the word add-in, which is here, but you probably don't already have it. So what you're going to need for those of you who just signed up, especially today, so you'll want to go to the Insert tab inside of Microsoft Word, and then you'll want to say Get Add-ins, type in Documate, and then this is going to show up. So then you can just go ahead and add the add-in right here. And then what that will do is it'll pop up on the side, and then you'll be able to add your client name, which is going to be Incubator, and then your API key, which if you look at the link that I sent inside of the group chat, incubator.documate.org/manage API, you will find your API key there as well. And actually maybe I'll just kind of type this right here for anyone who's watching the video afterwards. Make this lowercase. Where you'll find your API key will be incubator.documate.org/manage API. So if you're not doing it right now, if you watch the video later, that's where you'll find your API key. And that will allow you to log into the Word add-in. And you actually only need to do that once, and it'll be stored for you in the future. So if you have your Word add-in on the side, what we want to do is, I don't know if you already have it open, but you definitely want to refresh if you already had it open, because we've added a ton of new variables that we want to be updated here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select the workflow. So I have a few different workflows on my account, and you guys probably have 2 at this point, the independent contractor one and the sample one. So what we'll do is we'll scroll down and we'll pick the independent contractor agreement workflow. And that will allow me to choose from a variety of different things. So what this actually does is it has now pulled all the variables that we just created. So state name, client name, consultant name, all that information that we just put into our questions are now inside of the Word add-in for us to access. So the first thing we'll start with is some simple variables. So simple variables are a little bit like mail merge. I don't know if any of you guys have used mail merge, but basically it just takes information from one place and plugs it in. There's not really much complexity or logic involved there. It's just like name goes here, address goes here, etc. So a lot of the simple variables are actually going to be a little bit of that because there's not much more that you're going to do with them. So I will start with the simple variable up here because we want our company name here. So I'll just delete what was here before, or I could have just put my cursor there and it would still work that way too. But I'll put my cursor here and I'll choose the company name. And but here, because this is all caps, I probably want my company name to also appear in all caps. So what I'll do is I'll say format as uppercase. If you choose format as standard, which is just the default, it'll, sorry. So someone just asked, we're not in Documate anymore. So yes, so this is actually inside of Microsoft Word. So take that document that I sent over, open it up, and this piece is going to be done in Microsoft Word, and it can be done on Microsoft Word for Mac, for PC, Word Online, whichever one you have. And the reason we do that is because that ensures that any templates you have that are Microsoft Word templates, they will maintain all of the formatting that you already use in Microsoft Word, and you can use all the features that you have in Microsoft Word as well. So just let me know if. Okay, and then I see there's a little bit of confusion about the, so what you'll do is go to Microsoft Word, or just open up the document that I sent, and that'll obviously take you to Microsoft Word. Then go to the Insert tab. Then go to Get Add-ins. Yes, and I will share that. Actually, I'll just share it in the chat. So the link is incubator.documate.org/manage_API. So I just put it in the chat, and I'll also just write it in here. Oh, it won't let me do that until I select this. So let me just choose Documate, and then you'll click Add inside of the Word add-in, and it'll populate the Word add-in on the side panel for you. And once you have that, it's going to ask you, actually, let me X out of this so you can see what it's going to do. If you don't see it, if you go to your home tab, if you've downloaded it, it should be right here. And what it's going to ask you is it's going to ask you your client name, and it's going to ask you your API key. And so my client name is Demo, but yours is going to be Incubator. And then my API key is what I pulled off of incubator.documate.org/manage-API, this right here. Right here. Make sure you have manage_API. And so once you go here, you're going to get your own personalized API key that you'll be plugging in to this API key box. It's sort of like your little password to sign in. Does that make sense to everyone? So if it says you don't have any API keys, create a new one. Say new, and then you can name it whatever, just give it a name like Word add-in, whatever you want, and then click continue, I think it'll say, and it'll give you your new API key. Let me know if anyone is still working on that process or wants me to pause for a second here.
So we're naming the new API key Word add-in, and then there's a security method, and then it says allow sites. Do we skip those?
You can skip everything else. All you want to do is give it a name, and then once you continue to the next page, actually, let me just show you. So you'll click new. You'll give it a name. So like something like word add in 3, or I'll just give, you can say just word add in, leave these 2 blank. Click create, and it's going to give you this new API key. And so then you'll be able to use that API key right here. Make sense? And I'll just
Yes, thank you. And we only need to do that once?
You only need to do that once, and then once you do that, you're gonna paste it in here, and then now every time you go back to Microsoft Word, it's already gonna be saved for you, so you don't need to keep, you'll never have to come back to this page again. It's really just the initial setup.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
One more time before you go off that, where is that, Dorna? This
that is
API keys?
So yours will be at incubator.documate.org. Mine is at demo/manage_API. So this is going to be the link. And then if you may already have an API key in there, but if you don't, click new. Name it. Oh, okay. I see, Nicole. It's because I actually just saw you don't have access yet to the system. So I just gave you access. So Nicole, if you refresh, you should see it. And then what you'll do is you'll create new, type in whatever you want here. You can name it word add-in, and then click create. And again, this is the link to get there. This is an underscore.
So then Dorna, for me over in Microsoft Word, it's wanting me to sign in. Is that like the same credentials?
Oh, it's wanting you to sign in into Microsoft Word, you mean? Like into Microsoft itself?
Exactly. What I'm seeing on your screen, actually, that's what I'm looking at. In the Microsoft Word.
Right here. Right here, right? It's the same exact thing where it says client name and API key.
Correct.
Yes, so that's where we're going to plug in this information. So for your client name, you're going to write in incubator, like that. And then mine is demo. For the API key, you're going to put in that API key.
Which was in red, it was showing up red underneath. Okay.
Exactly. So for example, mine is the one here.
Yay, I got it.
Perfect. Excellent. So once you have that, you're going to put your client name in, incubator, put your API key in, and then click sign in. And just let me know, is everyone all set now, or is anyone still adding in their API key? Perfect. I'll just wait a few more seconds and then if no one has any, okay, perfect. Looks like
I'm sorry, can you go through those steps again?
yeah, of course.
Key, but what do I do with it?
Oh, so now you're going to, do you have the Word add-in installed on the side?
No.
Oh, okay, so in Microsoft Word, go to Insert at the top left, right here. Click Get Add-ins. Are you there yet? And then click, are you there right now?
Yeah.
Perfect. And then type in Documate and click Enter.
Okay.
And then just let me know when you're there. Are you all set there? And then just click add.
It's wanting privacy stuff.
So were you able to add it?
No, it's saying it wants me to, it says use Office Connected Experience to enable this, change your privacy settings.
That might be a Microsoft Word thing where they're not allowing you to add the add-in. If you want, I can touch base with you after you can maybe watch the recording of this piece, and then I can touch base with you to make sure that that you have this all set up, because that sounds like it's Microsoft Word that's preventing you from setting up the add-in. Does that work?
That works. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And then, all right. So everyone hopefully has, most everyone has the add-in added. And then we have this on the side. I'm going to delete this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to choose our workflow. So we now have the Word add-in. The Word add-in is pulling all the variables that existed inside of our web-based Documate instance, where all the questions that we've added in. And then what we'll do is we'll select our workflow. In this case, the workflow is the Independent Contractor Agreement. So we selected that, and what this does is it pulls all my variables for me. So what we were doing is we were adding the company name right here. And we want the company name to be bolded, and we want it to be in all caps, because that's just how the title seems to be written here. So what we'll do is we'll choose simple variables. Simple variables are like those mail merge type functions where we just want the data to be populated exactly where it says. And we'll say company name, which is already the first one, so it's already there. And we'll say format as uppercase, because we want it to appear in all caps. And we will just go ahead and put our cursor there and click insert variable. So is everyone with me there? Perfect. Okay. So what we just did is we now inserted our name, and this, because it's already bolded here, so if I unbolded it here, it would not be bold in the final document. If I keep it bold, it will be bold in the final document. That all make sense?
What do you have to do with that? I mean, what if you want to put like your logo? Is this like your company name?
So if you want to put your own logo, you can just have that always be in the document. These variables are for things that might change from time to time. So for example, the example here isn't for one company always generating the same independent contractor agreement. You could also build that. But the example here is for, let's say you're the law firm and you're giving your client a tool to be able to build an independent contractor agreement. So in one case, it may be ABC Corp. In another case, it may be Acme Corp. You know, that's the situation we're building for. But if you always want it to be the same company, then you could just have, you know, like ABC Corp, and you could put your own logo at the top as well. You could put the logo, whatever you put in here, like if you add a logo or you add in anything else, it will remain in the final version as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So, and then anything we do to these variables inside of the document is going to be that way in the final version of the document. So for example, if I unbold this, this won't be bold in the final version. If I italicize it and bold it, it's going to be italicized and bold in the final version. And if I underline it, it's going to be underlined, etc. So whatever I do there is going to be the same in the final version. So there's that one. And then let's add in some dates. So here we want to put today's date. In this case, we could have also just asked for the date, but I'm going to ask for today's date here. So I'll choose today, and then you can choose how you want it formatted. So I'll just do the standard formatting, but you can also choose from any of these other formatting types. And then one other thing I should note is that a lot of this formatting is very flexible. So we have included in the Word add-in most of what you're going to need for like 99% of legal cases that we've seen and use cases that lawyers have. But if, let's say, you have a different way that you want to put this in, just let us know, because it's likely that we can just give you a little bit of either language to put in there, or we can just add it into the Word add-in if it's a use case that's a common one. So just be aware of that. So we just inserted today's date. Did that make sense to everyone? So we had a blank here. Let me just kind of do this one more time just in case. And we put our cursor here, and we wanted the date to appear here. And so we wanted to populate with today's date every time. So what I did is I went to the simple variables. I chose today, which is a variable that just always exists for today's date. And then I said format as month, day, comma, year. And then I clicked insert variable in that location. And what that does is in all of these different locations where we have variables, it's inserting this little bit of like bracketed language. You don't need to learn how to do that bracketed language because it's all being inserted by the side panel for you. But it is pretty simple to also read. Like obviously this one says company name upper. This one says format date of today. And then there are a few other things we want to add in. So if that makes sense to everyone, and if you guys get simple variables, I'll just kind of move a little bit more quickly to add the other variables. Does it make sense? Does everyone sort of understand what simple variables are all about? I'll take silence as a yes. So what I'll do is now I want to insert the consultant's information. So I can either put my cursor somewhere, or if I want to replace it, I'll just put my cursor, drag my cursor over the whole section, and then I'll choose the consultant name. And again, I'll just click insert variable. It's going to put the consultant name there. Similarly, I'm going to put the company name here again, because this was a custom company where every time it might be different. So I'm going to put the company name here. So whatever's filled out inside of that workflow is what populates in here. And I'll click insert variable there. We didn't actually ask about whether it was a Delaware corporation, so I'll just remove this for now, since I didn't add as a question. But if in the future you want to, that's obviously one where you'd add another question, or you'd add some logic, but you'd probably actually just ask the question of state and then corporation, or what type of entity it is, like a corporation, LLC, something like that. Okay. Now, there are a few other places. Why don't we just add a few more of our simple variables, since we're on the topic of simple variables. So we know that at the very bottom, we have our company name here again. So again, super simple. Just go back here, put your cursor there, click insert variable, and it's going to have the company name there. We probably want to put the consultant's name here. And I don't think there's any other locations where we need to put the company name, because all of them are being referenced by company. So we have that now. Next thing we're going to do is some logic. So logic is going to be really valuable to you guys in making and expediting the process of setting these documents up, because what you can do is say that dependent on how a question has been answered, that answer will trigger several sections inside of the document and also in other documents as well, so that you can populate your documents much more quickly by just asking that question one time. So the first question that we had talked about, which I'm trying to see who, Janice had told us we need to ask about deliverables. And so whether or not deliverables exist depend on whether the project, whether the consultant's work is project-based. So what I'll do is I'll actually delete these brackets, because we don't really need them here. And instead, I'm going to set logic to this entire section through Documate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some phrase logic. We have two different types of logic: phrase logic and paragraph logic. And phrase logic is going to allow you to add logic to a specific section inside of the document. So I might say for this particular section, well, actually, let me set the logic on the side and then I'll drag my cursor over it. So I'll say show phrase when project-based, I guess it already knows what I'm asking. Project-based is yes. Because we're only going to have this section appear if it's project-based. And so, oops, I lost my section. It was right here. All right. So what we'll do is we'll pull our cursor over all of this like that. And then we're going to set this logic. So we've set the logic, the condition on the side. And by the way, these conditions can be much longer if you want them to be. So for example, we could add additional questions, add additional logic here. But for now, we'll just start with something simple. So we'll say show phrase when project-based is yes. And then we have this section that we want to be conditional, and we'll click insert condition. So what this just did is it inserted some bookends for me, basically. So this is some logic that says if project-based is the first bookend, and the second bookend is end if. So it's telling me that you want to start here and you want to end here. And if that condition is met, this whole section will appear. If that condition is not met, then that section will all disappear and it'll end with herein. And we can do that with as many layers as we want as well. So we just have one. You can have Boolean logic, so you can say if project-based is yes, and consultant is fixed fee, and or something else. You could do that as well. We'll just start with a simple example here. You can do that. You could also do nested logic. So let's say you have a huge section, and then within that section you have more nested logic. That's also possible.
Dorna, when I did that, I messed it up because I didn't select the full section that I wanted the bookends to go to. Is there a way to undo?
It should just, if you just kind of click undo, it should remove it. Does it do that for you?
Click undo in...
like directly inside of Microsoft Word?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It did. Thank you.
Is all the blue section gone?
All the blue's gone
now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Because I know on Microsoft Word Online, it works a little funny with the undo, but just make sure that it's gone if it's not there, because otherwise you'll have like a missing, like a little end if there that it doesn't know what to pair it up with. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to do is add that same logic to a few different sections here. So we have another section that we were looking at, based. So I believe it was this whole section right here, starting with the company and ending with there too. But I want to actually remove that footnote there because we don't need it anymore. Because now when you're setting this up with Documate like this, you're no longer going to need all those little notes inside of your document, because you're basically putting those notes inside of the questions. So those questions are asked and they're asked in a simple way, and depending on how they're answered, that will trigger the section. So we want to do the same thing here. So show phrase when project-based is yes. And we'll just drag our cursor over that whole thing and click insert condition. And then one thing you just want to make sure is like whatever is inside of that condition is what's going to be in the final version. So for example, here, like I see my condition starts here, and I have a space before that, after that period. And then I don't have a space before this period, which is perfect, because that means that this additional space is within the condition. So, because it's going to take you very literally in terms of spacing. So if you ever have a spacing issue, just look at it and make sure, oh, okay, I had one space that was always going to be there and one space that was conditional, and that's perfect because my next sentence starts there. All right, perfect. Now, I want to go down to the last page at the very bottom and add some additional logic, so that we can add some paragraph logic. Does the conditional logic make sense to everyone, by the way? Is everyone with me on that? Yeah, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down to this last page, Exhibit A, and we'll set a few different conditions here. So what we're going to do here is, you can probably see that there are two different options. There's show phrase when, and there's also show paragraph when. Show phrase when is for phrases within a paragraph. So like if we wanted to make this conditional, or even if we just wanted to make a word, like let's say we're doing pronouns and we're doing genders or plurals and plural and singular, we would probably want to use show phrase when, because it's just a single section right inside of here. Show paragraph when is useful when you have an entire paragraph, and the reason is that it will actually collapse the line spacing. So for example, if I had like a paragraph that was paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, if I use show phrase when, then if this is the condition, it's just going to remove this for me and it'll just be a blank 2. Whereas if I use show paragraph when, if this had a condition, it's going to entirely be removed. So that whole line will be removed, which means that if I have auto numbering, that'll fix my auto numbering, so they'll readjust. And then if any of you guys are doing like discovery or things like that, where there are numbers there, whether they are the word form field numbers, or whether we have our own numbering that you can add in there as well, they'll kind of readjust. So that's why you would use show phrase when. Sorry, that's why you would use show paragraph when. So let's go back over to the document, and we can remove this little description here. We can also remove all of this. So this is just some basic text that was instructional to us when we were using templates. So I can actually delete that. And then what I'll do is I'll add some logic here. So I know this one is only going to appear if it's a fixed fee, right? So I'll go to show paragraph when, and I'll say show paragraph when, what was our variable name for that one? Compensation is fixed fee. And then I'll click insert condition. And these ones are put in green just so you can kind of tell them apart. It's a little bit easier for you to be able to spot them. So that's the paragraph condition. They're a little bit, the only way that they're different, in case you're curious about the syntax, is it has a little P there. You don't need to learn what the syntax means. Please do keep them on separate lines. So the paragraph condition should have the first line, the first green part above the paragraph, and the second green part below the paragraph. So it shouldn't be on the same line. So that's how you're gonna make sure that your conditions are perfect. And again, you don't need to learn the syntax, but what this says is if compensation is fixed fee, so it's pretty understandable, but it's being input by the side system. Now let's do the same thing for these. So we have hourly. We already had compensation selected. If compensation is hourly, insert condition. And then we'll do the same thing for the equity compensation. But actually we should remove this instruction and go directly here. Drag our cursor over this again and say equity compensation. Show paragraph when equity compensation is yes. There we go. So now we have 3 different sets of conditions here for our, someone just says compensation shows is not. Is that what I did, or is that what someone else, is that what you did inside of your section? You can also do compensation is not, but you should be choosing for this one. Oh, okay. So it sounds like there's just a little misunderstanding, but you can choose either one of them. So you can say show paragraph when equity compensation is yes, or you can, if you had a situation where you wanted to say is not yes, you could do that. I mean, this is a yes, no question, so you probably just want to use no. But if you had like a multiple choice question and you had many different options and you wanted to say show paragraph when marital status is not divorced or something like that, that might be one that you might want to use is not for. So we'll say show paragraph when equity compensation is yes, and we have inserted that condition. And if we wanted to add additional Boolean operators there, we could have done that as well. So we could have said show paragraph when equity compensation is yes, and project-based is no, or something like that. So there's kind of there are a lot of layers that you could add there. So what we've done so far is we've added these paragraph conditions here. Now what we want to do is we have some sections inside of these. So we want to know the fixed fee. We want to know the hourly rate. We want to know, we didn't add everything in here because we didn't have time to add every single little piece there, but let's start with the fixed fee. So I'll put the fixed fee, I'll just put my cursor there, or I can just delete it and put my cursor there. And I'll choose, that one's going to be another simple variable. And so I'll say fixed fee, and then click insert variable. And that will be there. And actually what I could also do is I could have formatted the fixed fee as a currency, and then it'll always have 2 decimal points and a comma between every 3 numbers. So that's another option. You have a lot of formatting options. You could format it as a decimal with a certain number of decimal points, whatever you prefer. For now, I'll just use the regular number as it's entered. And all of these conditions are being analyzed in your document from the outside in. So you can put them in you can add them in any order you want, but when the system is looking at them, it's first going to look at the outside layer. So obviously it's not going to just write in the fixed fee if the compensation is not fixed fee. It's only going to actually put in that fixed fee if the compensation is fixed fee, because otherwise this whole thing will be gone. And you could have we could also add, with more complex documents, we may add nested logic. So we may have another section inside of here that says, you know, maybe if we had like we might have had a question about milestones, and we could have added here, we could have simplified this and said, will there be any milestones? And then there could be a phrase condition here that says, if milestones is yes. All right, perfect. And then one more thing we'll add here is we'll add the hourly rate right here. And then we'll also add the hourly cap, actually, right here. Like that. Is everyone with me on the document? Have we all been able to set up, if you're doing it today, have we all been able to set up some simple variables, some phrase logic, some paragraph logic, and I'll show you a few other features that we haven't touched on yet, but perfect. Jordan said yes. How could you edit a variable if you wanted to? So let's say, what I recommend is not changing the variable name if you have it in your document already, but you can change anything else about the variable name. Otherwise you have to remove it from your document, obviously. But let's say we have this fixed fee. Let's go, since we're already on this exhibit and we have them side by side. Let's say I wanted to change something about this question about the fixed fee. You can change this question, or you can add additional options here. But I would not, if you've already added into your document, you shouldn't change the variable name unless you're fine changing the variable name in both places. But you can change anything about this question. So maybe I could say, like, instead of how will the consultant be compensated, I could add some additional language here, like, this is how you're going to pay them, or something like that. Is that what you mean by editing a variable, or are you talking about something else? And then what if you want to change the output? Like, what if instead of number, you wanted to, I'm just going to read to everyone since, especially on the video, you probably won't have this, but Jordan asked, what if you wanted to change the output? Like, what if instead of number, you wanted it decimal format? So in that case, what I would do is just go back here, pull your cursor over that section, and you can either delete it, or you can just put your cursor over it and it'll replace it. So I can say, you know, I want like 2 decimal points or something like that. Or if I want currency, and I put that in there. So yeah, you just basically redo the variable. Perfect. All right. Any other questions on the document? I'm going to show you I'm going to tell you a little bit about numerical calculations, about date calculations, and then repeating items, which we didn't really get to cover because there wasn't really a place for us to put it in this document, but I think those will be good for your tool set. But does anyone have any questions on this so far? Sounds like most of you were able to get some of the basics in. All right, perfect. So let me go over numerical calculations, date calculations, and then I'll go over repeating items. And then we'll actually just go ahead and drop our document into the output documents and run this. So just briefly, there are some things you can do with numerical calculations. So let's say you wanted to add up or subtract or multiply different numbers. You could do that. So let's say I wanted to insert some number here that was right here. That was the hourly rate times 40. I could do that, or I could add more numbers, you know, plus the fixed fee or something like that. You could do that. And then what you would do is you can format it in any way as you want. Maybe I'll do it as a money, put my cursor there and click insert calculation. So what this does is it basically says currency, hourly rate plus 40 plus fixed fee. And you don't have to learn that, but if you wanted to, if you had really complex calculations, you could actually come in here and do like order of operations and put more parentheses in them. So if you wanted this to be like 40 and then put like a parentheses here, you could do that as well. That's usually more valuable for like your really complex variables or your very complex calculations. So that's numerical calculations, which we won't put in this document. Date calculations allow you to calculate the length of time between two dates or add and subtract time from a date. So for example, if you wanted to ask someone for their date of birth and then you wanted to calculate their age, which happens probably a lot in like family law type documents, where you're asking about a bunch of children's names or maybe a person or their spouse's names, or dates of birth, then you might want to say length of time between two dates, length of time between whatever your date variable is, and today, and then you could display it in years to calculate their age. Or you could add or subtract time from a date. So that would mean, let's say you want to say, I want to add 20 days to today. What that would mean is that every time you run your workflow, for example, if today is October 8th, if you had a date inside of your document in that location, it would say October 28th. And tomorrow it'll say October 29th and so forth. There are also some methods to make those like only fall on business days as well. So if it falls on a weekend, you can have it kind of recalibrate and fall on the next or former business day. Then finally, the last thing I want to show you is one that I'm not going to have you put in because there's not really a spot for in the document, but it's repeating items. So if we create a new page here, and I'll just call mine repeating item example, and we add a repeating item question. The repeating item question is really useful for anything where you may have zero of or hundreds of. So for example, children, shareholders, former names, assets, things like that. It might be really useful to use something like a repeating item, because then you only need to ask about, you basically say, this is all the information I want about each child. And then it'll ask it continuously until the person, whether that's you or your client or whoever's filling this out, is done with that process. So I'll just give you the example of children. And so I will enter the item name first. Then I'll ask the first question, which is, do you have any of that item? You can write these however you want. And that's similar to if you were gonna talk to your client and you were gonna ask them about all their children, all their children's names and dates of birth, you probably wouldn't start with what's your third child's date of birth. You would start with, do you have any children first? So that's what this initial question is. And then the continuation question is actually optional, but I'll say that's for if you weren't collecting them on the same page. You don't really need to worry about that right now, but we'll just add this question for now. Do you have any other children? It's like the continuation question that keeps asking. Then the repeating questions are all the different attributes that you want to know about those children. So it could be child name, oops. It could be child date of birth. And you could even make this a date or do other types of formatting there as well. So the next thing I want you guys to do is actually just go ahead and save your documents. And what we'll do is we'll load them to our output documents and go ahead and run our workflows. So what I'll do here is save this. Mine's just on my desktop, and I will be able to. So just a little bird's eye view of the process. We've set up all our questions. We've set up logic to all of our questions. Then we went into Microsoft Word, and we use the Word add-in in the case that you have a Word document. If you had a PDF, you would just load it to the system. But for Word documents, you go into Microsoft Word. We use the Word add-in to add all of our different variables, to add logic to certain sections, to add any other customizations we want, such as numerical calculations or date calculations. And now the final step of the process is to go to your output documents and load the document there. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and load my independent contractor agreement right here. You can either drag it in there or you can just choose the file. And again, if I had 5 other documents I wanted to populate at the same time, I would have done the same thing with my other documents, and those would all populate here. A few other things you could do here is create conditional document outputs, or send the finalized documents to a particular email address. So what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and run my workflow. Is everyone there with me? Has everyone been able to load their document? Or just maybe type in the chat if you haven't, or if you want me to slow down. And then we'll go ahead and run this. So I'm gonna click save and run. And that opens up our live version of the document, of the workflow. So it's this web-based interface, and you can also take this and send it to your clients and have them fill it out on their phone, or you can fill it out on your phone. And what I'll do is I'll start by answering my questions. So I'll say we're in California. I'll say the company name, this particular company, which is maybe one of my clients, is ABC Corp. The consultant's name is John Smith. It is not project-based. The venue is going to be Los Angeles. And we're just going to move forward. How will the consultant be compensated? If I say fixed fee, this question about the fixed fee is going to open up. If I say hourly, these 2 questions about the hourly rate will open up. So I'll just choose hourly in this case. And I'll say, you know, they're going to be paid $25 an hour, and they're only allowed to work 15 hours per week. Will there be equity compensation? You can choose. I'll say no in this case. This is a question that I don't know if you guys all added, but if you did, just to show you how the repeating item question works, even though this one has nothing to do with independent contractor agreements, we'll just click, I'll click yes on mine. And just to show you, there may be other things that you may have wanted to add in the independent contractor agreement as a repeating item question. So for example, we could have added something like, what are all the different services that are being provided? And what are the deliverable dates? That might be a really good one to add as a repeating item for something like this. But I'll just use this simple example. If I had 2 children, then I would enter both of their information. Click continue. I'll continue through this process. On the final page, you always get to review all of your answers. So this is a short workflow, so it doesn't matter that much. But if you had a really lengthy workflow, like I've seen people with 300, 400 page workflows, then it's really valuable for you to be able to go back and change answers because you might have entered something wrong on the first page that you now see that you need to fix. And then you'll just press that continue button and your documents will be generated and shown to you at the end of the process. So there's my independent contractor agreement. And if I had more documents, they would all be populated at once. I could also download them as a zip file if I wanted to, or email them to someone if I want to as well. But for now, what I'll do is I'll open up the document. And as we can see here, we had the option of opening it up as a PDF or a Word document. So if we wanted to edit it, we could use the Word document, or if we just want the PDF version, we can just use this version. So as you can see, this information is populated. So ABC Corp is in all caps, but they're also written in lowercase partially on the other locations. We didn't set conditions to everything. So some of these, you know, we should have added additional conditions here and remove some of these other sections. But if we go down to the very bottom, if my browser wants to take us there, there we go. We have just the hourly rate section here, because we said we did not want the actual equity compensation, and we said we wanted it to be a fixed, an hourly rate, not a fixed fee. So you would add that there as well. That's added there as well. And then we have some information about these other blocks. But we, so that's how the basic process works. Was everyone able to run their workflow and generate the document? And it's really important that you had variable names here as well. So if you weren't able to load it, let me know. Okay, it sounds like some of you are going to try another time and watch the recording maybe to finish this up. All right, awesome. Well, so what we've done so far is we've set up all our questions, we set up our documents. You can do a lot more here. So if you wanted to really make this really robust, you could add videos and images inside of this process, particularly if you're going to make it client facing. You can kind of customize it for your needs. You can embed it on your own website even. So just let me know if you guys have any questions, either now or in the future. And I'll also put my email in the chat, dorna@documate.org. So if you guys have any questions or want to talk about any of this, you can ask me. We also have a Slack channel where we have a lot of attorneys who sometimes collaborate on what they're working on. And so I think you guys all should have the link to that as well. But if you want to join there, we you can talk to others who are building maybe similar tools to you. All right, perfect. Well, that's sort of the end of my part of the presentation, and open to have, if you guys do have questions right now, we can cover them right now, or we can always cover them afterwards if they come up as you're playing around as well.
Dorna, this is Anne-Marie. I want to ask everyone if they would please put their email in the chat, and that way I can send you a link to this recording once we're done, since we didn't register on the front end.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's been really great being here. And I think what we were thinking of doing is for the next session, having you guys actually bring in your own documents, because I know not everyone is actually going to be using independent contractor agreements in their practice. So if you have a document that you want to automate, whether it's a Word document or a PDF document, next time we can actually get on and go through kind of a little hands-on working group session where everyone's working on separate things and asking questions of each other at the same time. And it may be helpful for everyone to sort of share what they're working on before, so that if there are any matches between any of you, then you know kind of who's in your group and who's working in a similar area as well.
I use Practice Panther, and this reminded me of setting up my intake form that I have in Practice Panther, just the beginning of it, where we're selecting the questions and with it, one answer choice or checkbox. I have a lot of those same things, so it reminded me of that. And I'm just wondering, I know that Practice Panther has Zapier, but I didn't know if I could work directly with this program, or if I would need some other extension, or if it just wouldn't work at all and I would just have to use them separately.
So right now they do need to be used separately. We have we do have an integration with Clio, but we are working on integrations with other practice management systems as well, including a Zapier integration, which we don't have out yet, but is first of all on Drew's highly requested list as well, but is going to be out. We're working on it actively right now. So once we have that Zapier integration, you'd be able to connect your Documate account into the Practice Panther account as well.
Okay,
without a native integration.
Wonderful.
Great. And I don't think we yet, Beth just asked in the chat whether we have a date for the next training. I don't think we have that set yet. So Anne-Marie and I and Cynthia will all sort of get together and figure out what the best time for that is soon. All right, wonderful. Any other questions or anything that you guys wanted to cover before I let you guys loose into playing with your documents? You can always, again, reach out to me or message me, email, phone, whatever you prefer, and we can help you out with anything. So hope to talk to you all very soon. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and to Anne-Marie and Cynthia and I don't know, I think I saw Maria was on here at some point, for having me. I really appreciate being part of this group. You guys are sort of like the forefront of a lot of innovation in the legal space, and it's really an honor to be able to present to you guys and hopefully be able to follow your work.
Thank you, Dorna, for sharing all of your expertise in this with us. That was I'm still absorbing, but it was great to actually be able to get in there and work with it and have a product at the end, for me anyway. So thank you so much for your time and energy and walking us through it, for sure.
Wonderful.
This is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right, then watch your emails for the recording, and then we'll also get you direct invitations for the next hands-on bring your own document, BYOD, and we will look to do that probably in a couple weeks. So get in there anyways and keep working on things, because the sooner you put this stuff into practice for yourself and practice with the software, the more it will sink in and the more comfortable I think you'll get with using it as well. All right, great. Definitely. Well, thanks everybody, and happy Thursday, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.